This year's wildfire season is already now the second worst on record. Tens of thousands of people, largely Indigenous, have been forced to flee their homes this summer. According to information posted on the Indigenous Services Canada website, people from 28 First Nations in Canada are currently under evacuation. For more, we're joined by our Truth and Politics panel. Niigaan Sinclair is a columnist with the Winnipeg Free Press. Jennifer Laewetz is a CEO of Paskwâw Strategies. Jennifer, Niigaan, great to see you as always. Niigaan, we'll start with you. And the federal government saying this is the second worst wildfire season already, second only to 2023. Does that come as any surprise to you?
Well, it certainly is evidence that we're having increasing years of record wildfires. There's two coalescing issues. The first, of course, is that a long-standing neglect of dealing with the issues that provoke wildfires. That's the underbrush, that's the ongoing dealing with natural resources, the underfunding of natural resources. And then, of course, there's climate change, frequent droughts, the drying of areas that cause forest fires. And while we still see the majority of forest fires being caused by natural causes, lightning, for example, about 40% of forest fires are caused by human reasons. And of course, the whole case that there would be climate change would make them 100% evidence of human interaction. So we are seeing this as the new normal.
Jennifer, the federal government says the last 3 fire seasons are among the 10 worst on record. That goes back to 1972. What do you make of that?
Yeah, the wildfire seasons are definitely getting worse and worse, especially in Saskatchewan. I think this, in my lifetime, feels like the worst summer we've had yet, especially in terms of evacuations and risks to people's homes, and homes have even burnt down. It is nice to hear that the federal government is acknowledging it, so I hope that they will fund and resource our nations and our isolated communities, especially because that's the communities that are the most impacted by this. But I echo everything that Niigaan said. The environment is changing. We're living in very, very dry and hot seasons now. And it goes back to the resources and the way that we're managing our forests and we're managing, fire prevention.
Niigaan, there was an editorial in the Winnipeg Free Press this week that talked about the smoke and Manitoba's 2 seasons now being known as winter and smoke season rather than construction season. You think this is going to be the new normal summers ahead?
Undoubtedly, this is going to be the new normal, and of course, disproportionately impacting First Nations in the north. The worst thing possible we could have is what we're seeing in the United States, which is a federal government that's denying basic science. We do not need a lack of data or the eradication of data that relates with climate change and then also relates with making the government look bad. We don't need any of that. And so I hope that when anyone watching this is when you demand things of your MP or your representative in government, whether that be in First Nations governments or in mainstream Canadian governments, demand that they commit themselves to what is an ongoing issue involving climate change. We're seeing this more and more and more as droughts happen, as there's continues to be a drying out of the earth, and then at the same time, a chronic underfunding of natural resources throughout the country. What you're going to see is exponential impacts. This is going to cost for everybody. This is not about a First Nations issue. When First Nations are evacuated and put into cities, that's things that all taxpayers have to pay for. So climate change and wildfires are very much being a very Canadian public issue. And everybody can participate by simply demanding more of our representatives.
Jennifer, we've seen criticism of the handling of the evacuations and all of this related to wildfires when it comes to the federal government, the provinces, the Red Cross. Your thoughts on the way things have been handled this summer?
Yeah, having lived in the city that was, hosting a lot of the people that were evacuating from the north, some of those people being my own family, it was concerning to see how disorganized it was, especially when this is not a new thing. And it's not like we weren't, seeing something like this coming, especially with the dry conditions and how hot it was, and, it just started picking up and getting worse. I think, when it comes to the federal government, I feel like they have respectfully almost got off on this. We're seeing a lot of the heat going toward the provinces, especially in Saskatchewan, where a lot of the communities that are most heavily impacted have been First Nations. But also there have been, from what I've been told, some contracts going to Red Cross, and Red Cross that's supposed to step in. People were supposed to get help from the Red Cross. The feds are telling us everybody donate, we'll match whatever Red Cross is raising. But then that support is very slow to come out, especially to families and people that are impacted by the evacuations. So it's been kind of frustrating all around how it seems that all of these different groups are not talking to one another, and the resources are not getting to where they need to go as quickly as they need to get to there.
Niigaan, I'll throw the same question to you and your thoughts on the handling of the wildfire situation by the feds, the provinces, and Red Cross.
Well, on one level, I have a lot of sympathy and a lot of empathy for provincial leaders. I mean, nobody prepares for an emergency, which we can take measures to make sure that the emergency preparedness is adequately resourced, has available money, also trucks, also firefighting equipment when it's required, and often with very short term. At the same time, I've heard radical, loud, and very emergent requests be denied, be ignored, and also in many cases hearing from chiefs, grand chiefs in particular, who write emails, messages to the newspaper that I work for, also to me personally, complaining about the ways in which the Red Cross treats people, poor, inadequate food, offering things like food cards that often have to be reloaded and people have to stand in lines. People who are put into hotels in very dangerous situations that are preyed upon by individuals who are then accessing people with a lack of security. There is a real issue going on with the way Red Cross treats First Nations. If this was Canadians, I would bet that this treatment would not be taking place.
Yeah, I think we'd be hearing a lot more about it. Niigaan, staying with you, given this is likely to be the new norm, is there a way we can be better prepared for next summer and moving forward?
Well, I think that the fact is that budgets have to now include firefighting, safety, firefighting emergencies. I mean, this summer alone, we're looking at about 40 to 50,000 people who have been evacuated from the north in Manitoba down to the cities. And I'm also sitting here in BC, in which they are constantly facing emergencies and evacuations almost weekly here. It's something in which all provincial governments have to get adequate support for. And we know provincial governments put most of their funding into healthcare. We now have to realize that healthcare, as an example, is supporting people who are then removed from the north. That means mental health services. We have to have a national fire a plan. And that national fire plan has to involve specifically First Nations at the table, guiding those projects so that some of the concerns we spoke about with Red Cross, for example, or with any emergency services, are not continually inadequately produced, inadequately perpetrated.
Changing gears here, Jennifer, you wanted to talk about something that's alleged to have happened in your neck of the woods. Videos of armed men driving around that have been shared thousands of times. The Saskatchewan RCMP aren't saying much, but the Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations has. What can you tell us about this?
In terms of the statement from the FSIN, it's not really clear what it is that they're alluding to, if it's those videos, because we know that there were a couple First Nations that did put out statements regarding those videos and men being armed. I was a little concerned at first whether or not to, believe things that are going around on Facebook, but seeing the Saskatchewan license plates and people mishandling firearms in a way that's not legal is 1,000% concerning. But what is getting more and more concerning is, when we talk about immigration in this country, we also have to talk about the fact that there is still a lot to learn in terms of reconciliation and people that might be new to our communities or new to our country and new to us as First Nations people, and what it looks like to deal with a whole group of people such as us that have lived under an Indian Act and have lived under, extensive oppression for so long that we're not allowing, communities or groups of people to pick up those stereotypes and those ways of oppressing us like everybody else has. So I do respect the FSIN for putting out that statement and talking about the importance of protecting our women. I will say that, it is a little weird to come from the FSIN when in the last decade, two of their biggest stories that have come out are the mistreatment of the two female chiefs that have spoke out regarding how they've been treated. I think there's a lot moving right now in terms of how women are treated. And, we just talked about that report on our last panel. I think, this is a very, very clear picture that we need to strengthen our laws on nations. We need to strengthen our communities, and we need to strengthen the respect that we have for our vulnerable groups of people, including our women and our youth.
Jennifer, Niigaan, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks to you both, as always.
Yeah, Niigaan, thanks.
Thanks.